This map is striking. The sixth mass extinction in Earth's history is upon us and is precipitated by human actions. Powerful legal protections to plants and animals are in the United States under the Endangered Species Act. But at times like this of high economic stress, the science at the base of these protections must be sharper than ever. Those of us who have lived in Hurricane Alley know the difference between a hurricane forecast that's pretty good and one that's correct. Forecasts, whether of a hurricane or of a species, are based on statistical models that have uncertainty, even when the data that builds them is good. Recall the hype around tracking a handful of hurricanes at the peak of a season, and then consider the challenge of successfully managing 35,000 threatened species. For my dissertation, I partnered with the federal government to provide a population forecast for one threatened species, the wood stork. This bird has a familiar backstory. Growth of Miami and other cities damaged wetlands, leading the population to decline some 80% by 1970. But extinction modelers should also account for changes to the species' behavior over time. Since the 1990s, storks have started to eat exotic fish from urban ponds and nest later in the year in places like golf courses and county parks. In just a few generations, storks have changed from being a South Florida local to nesting as far north as North Carolina. The question is, how do we go about predicting the likelihood that a species will evolve fast enough to keep pace with environmental change? For 3 years, I monitored urban versus natural colonies in the Everglades. I folded my data into a long-term database and am analyzing trends in the survival, diet, and genetics of storks from Florida to North Carolina. This will tell us whether storks' new urban lifestyle makes them less vulnerable to extinction than they were historically. And the real gem is that we'll have the DNA to look for evidence of evolutionary adaptation. These are the tools we need to talk about adaptive capacity, that is, to quantify our optimism that a species will be able to adapt to future environmental change. Species that are likely to evolve fast may not need the same costly legal protections, so this is new information for prioritizing our conservation dollars. My work with adaptive capacity illustrates an approach that can be used for threatened species around the world. It's one way to modernize the way our science interacts with law and policy, both for the benefit of species like the wood stork and our human selves.